it was the blink of an eye in the second half. I think it was in the first sort of 3 or 4 minutes, wasn't it?
That's it, yeah.
Tide had
43rd
turned.
minute, when the kick goes over, it's 12-10.
Yeah, and at that point, I thought, okay, that's it. We've got our noses in front now. We can kick on from this now, and I think we had a bit more pressure as well following this, and we should have, we should have pressed home our advantage at that point. In those 10 minutes before Huddersfield's try, I just thought we were getting the territory, we were getting the possession, we were making the meters, we were making our tackles, and completing the sets, and the errors had seemed to disappear
The
slightly at that
forwards
point.
certainly started to make some ground, didn't they? Which they hadn't. It felt like they hadn't done all first half. But the errors crept back in because Cade Cuss dropped the ball in our own half, didn't he? And it ended with a decent enough attacking kick from Cogger, but J Field was able to take it right on the line. So there was still the errors in the game, maybe, at that point.
Yeah, I don't think they were as prevalent. But again, if you go back to Alan's point about Chris Hill, at that point, Chris Hill would have probably come back on the field to steady the ship. But not only does Chris Hill not coming back negate the impact that he would have undoubtedly had, it also means that the other players, you're down one man, you're down to your three substitutes instead of four, and that makes those middles work that little bit harder. They have to do a few more minutes, so it gets, and it really tests them. We're gonna, still not quite as fit as St. Helens, but I think the fitness levels have improved, immeasurably this season as well. So yeah, there was still the odd error creeping in, but I still felt confident at that point. I felt like I think we had one set where perhaps it ended with an error actually, but I think we had one set where we were sort of attacking from about 30 metres from the Huddersfield line, and I thought, right, this is it, we're going to score here and get that magical 2-score lead, because if we'd have got to try and converted it, that would have been an 8-point ball game, and I don't think Huddersfield would have come back from that.
Yeah, I think that might have been where the Cust error happened. The next talking point in the game was the first Smithies penalty, the high tackle on Greenwood. I'm not sure if it was the touch judge who spotted it. Daniel Levi certainly did, and it was the right call. It was a swinging arm. Probably what saved him from a card on this one was it brushed off the shoulder, and the main impact was kind of the side of the neck rather than the face and the chin. But it was a poor effort from Smithies that ended up around the jaw. This is the one they got the grade C charge for from the match review panel. I actually thought this one was worse of the two. And if it had got given a yellow card for this one, definitely in the first month of the season, this would have been a yellow card without a shadow of a doubt. So I think there's an element of luck there. But doubly made lucky for Wigan by Lola here missing the kick and sending it wide. That was crazy, wasn't it, Alan?
Yeah, you've obviously goal kicking ultimately was crucial. You've got a lot of missed. You've got what was it? Did he kick one goal?
1 out of 5, Lola here.
1 out of 5. You can't do that. You just can't. In a tight match, you can't afford to miss kick. And there was obviously some tougher kicks in there, but this one, I mean, you've got to kick that.
40 metres out, 2 yards to the side of the sticks.
You've got to think, even if your kick is a bit dodgy, you've got to think hopefully they can just kick it straight. But yeah, it was not a good sign, and it was a sign that they were slightly worried about scoring again.
And then Huddersfield, who'd been conservative but very accurate with the ball, hadn't made any unforced errors, certainly that had been picked up at least anyway, so at that stage, and then Cogger drops the ball, probably the first unforced error, that leads to Wigan getting a turnover possession. Smith makes a half break going up the other way, one of his growing influences in the game. He'd already scored a try, he'd already thrown an amazing pass, but he was growing hugely into this game at this point. Cust put in a nice kick that Jerry McGilvery had to take right on his goal line, was forced in goal. Wigan got a few sets around this time, around the 50-minute sort of mark, but Tommy Luluai was held just short in front of the post and then knocked on at the play of the ball. David, did you think we were getting into the ascendancy then at that point?
Yeah, I thought we were well into the ascendancy, and as I said, I think had we scored at that point, I think it would have been we could have, Wigan could have got on and scored 2 or 3 more tries. Going back to the Lola Haya point though, with the kicking, I think there's two things there where, Huddersfield had this game plan that they were sticking rigidly to. As I said, they seem to go for the power play more often than not. They seem to go for 2 points when they got in range more often than not. It was a close game, and that's valid. When I watched Wigan back in the 80s and 90s.
Conservative kicks as well that had no chance of going dead as well, weren't there, into playing into that.
Exactly. But this is where I think first point of Huddersfield's potential rigidity to the game plan and poor game management, whether that be from Ian Watson on the sidelines directing things or whether that be from the on-field captain, because I'm no Huddersfield fan, but Oliver Russell's a pretty good kicker. Now, I know that he's come back from a hamstring injury and only just made the game, but at that point when Lolohea had missed 3 kicks and one of those definitely a kickable, for a professional. I couldn't kick it, so I'm not gonna bag him for not kicking it because I couldn't kick it. I couldn't kick it from fucking 20 meters out from the sticks. But from that point, that lad's confidence is gone. So you take that. And somebody said to me, well, Russell was fit and he was playing, but I think place kicking is a very different technique than kicking the ball in hand and uses the muscles a little bit differently. But
Russell wasn't doing the range kicking either, was he, for the most part? He kicked a couple of ways.
Just tactical kicks, wasn't it? So you think, right, well, he's not 100%. So at that point, you knew that Russell wasn't 100% fit. And at that point, you're thinking somebody needs to take the kicking off Lolohea because he's having an absolute nightmare and it's affecting his confidence in that point. So yeah, the confidence from Wigan, again, my confidence sort of ebbed and flowed out. I'll tell you a bit later on when I doubt it. But at this point, again, I thought if we get a score here, we're going to win this game. We're going to go, we'll get you'll get the 6 points, 8 points advantage, and we'll kick on from there. But as it turned out, that kind of took another little setback shortly afterwards.
Yeah, well, Cudjoe McGilvery made a bit of a half break down the right. I thought Cudjoe was outstanding. I can't believe that he didn't get more votes for the man of the match. I thought Cudjoe and Latelli were both miles better than Chris McQueen, but anyway, what do I know? But I made a half break down the right, but Lolohea knocked on. He did just enough to stop Marshall getting a nice pick-up that would have got the length of the field. So, and then Wigan made a bit of a half break, but got a bit scrappy at dummy half. I think Luloi had to do a forward roll whilst throwing the pass, and it kind of came to nothing. Smith put a kick through, but it was too close to Lolohea, and this is where Lolohea breaks a tackle, gets the ball to Latelli. I think this is only the second or third clean break that Huddersfield have made in the game. Down their left edge, Morgan Smithies does a great effort to get back in touch with Ricky Latelli, who's clearly a faster man. Kind of has him by the collar, but can't bring him down. So swings his arm over the top, catches him in the head. Talking point comes up very much. All the Huddersfield fans obviously wanted a card, and you wouldn't have necessarily said when it's hit him direct in the head with that grab over the top that it wouldn't have been. All the neutrals wanted a card, of course. I don't think you could have again had too much argument if a card was given, but at the same time, I don't think this one was anywhere near as bad as people were making out. He got a grade B charge for this one, did Morgan Smithies. I'd have called it a grade A, but that put pay to that, but got another penalty for the Giants. Smithies got a bit of a talking to, but no card. So, Alan, what's your take on that incident, and do you think it should have been a card?
I've only seen both of these live, so I haven't seen them back. So I haven't looked at it in any kind of forensic detail. I think there is a tendency to try to keep players on the field in finals or in big games. I think you're absolutely right that maybe one or both of these would have been yellow cards earlier on in the year. There's been this slight softening of implementation.
Yeah.
I didn't when I saw them live. I didn't think of them as obviously yellow cards. I didn't think of them as that. Kind of around me, there wasn't other than the kind of the expected kind of shouting and whatever. There was no kind of cries of off or anything like that. So for me, I think penalty is sufficient. I think
it feels like both of them were like, in football terms, yellow cards in football, but were they bad enough to see a player be off the pitch necessarily in the final. I don't know. I wouldn't have argued if there was a card given. But then Luke Yates interviewed after the game. He said he wouldn't have been happy if they'd got a card for that, as in Huddersfield had got a card for that tackle. So, I know Watson said something slightly different, but there you go. Yeah. I guess there's an element of move on from it. At that point, either Smithies could have been in the bin already or could have gone into the bin then. Wigan was still ahead at that point, 12-10, but it didn't last very long, David, did it? Because on the next set from that penalty, really good drift out, taking defenders out of the play, then it slipped offload by Cudjoe, pushed Jerry in. He was too strong for Liam Marshall. Classic McGilvery finish, really, but conversion missed again. 14-12 after 58 minutes. What were you feeling now?
Yeah, I mean, looking back at the Smithies incident, it looked bad from one angle, which is the angle where you see the guy's face. It seemed to me it was careless rather than reckless, because like you said, he was grabbing with his left hand and he managed to grab hold of him. His arm came round in like a natural movement, but yeah, it did cop him full in the face.
There's an element of he didn't want to do the tackle where he comes off his feet to try and drag him down as well, wasn't there? So he's kind of like fighting to get over the top, but he definitely hit him in the head. No arguments about that.
Yeah, I thought it was a worse one than the first one because it was direct. It was his hand straight to the face. I wouldn't say a fist, it wasn't clenched, but it was definitely a hand straight across the chops. So, you know what you're getting with Jermaine McGilvery. He's done it so long, and he could probably take on 3 or 4 plays. He's got that much upper body strength. You've got to be disappointed with the defending because we had the bodies there, even though Cudjoe had sort of given the space, we still had the bodies across to try and prevent him, and he ended up sort of bouncing 2 or 3 off and then just slamming the ball down. So again, missed kick. Again, it gives you that when you've got a kicker, and again, going back to Harry Smith, and I think his successful percentage rate this year is up in the 80s, which is a marked turnaround.
Oh God, yeah, it's been awesome.
And for me, it's cemented his place in the team. Obviously, we've not got Hardacre there anymore, so for me, Harry Smith now is one of those almost like, Sam Tompkins, Tim Smith moments where you've got a young lad can cement his place in the team now and lay down a marker, which, he certainly seems to be doing, particularly with his involvement later in the game, which we'll get to, but still confident at this point. There's still plenty of time on the clock, even though it wasn't one of the... there are some days where you go to a game and you just know it's not going to be your day. And very often those games are the games where you're giving away silly penalties, giving away, silly knock-ons where there's nobody on you. It's just to play the ball, fumble, or a pass that's just slightly askew. But that still didn't feel like one of those days to me. I was like, right, we're 2 points behind, we've got 25 minutes left. We're still going to get some more pressure. We're still going to get some more territory here. And I think we've spoken, certainly it's been spoken about in the media, but we've got the X Factor players now, which we're utilising, which we didn't do last year. It could have been a very different story last year if Bevan French, Jay Field had been fit for the entirety of the season. So you from previous experience, even if this season with Liam Marshall's trying the semi-final, with Jay Field's last gasp try against Salford at the DW, that Wigan can score from pretty much anywhere on the pitch if they get a man in space. One of those 3 players, Marshall, French and Field. So at that point, confidence was still going, even though we were making, it's still inviting Huddersfield into the game.
Even other players, there was the Liam Farrell run was against Hull FC that set up the position for the winning drop goal in that game as well. There's been occasions this year, hasn't there, striking from deep or getting into the right position late in games. Kind of at the hour mark, the game it felt like it sort of started to swing a bit. Wigan were chancing their arm a little bit more, and Huddersfield was certainly not chancing anything.
No.
Wigan had an attack where Thornley knocked on close to the line. It was well covered. That play was well covered by the defence. Wigan had a bit of a scramble play on the last tackle where the ball broke to Harry Smith, but he turned it back inside rather than looking. I think he could have looked for Thornley and French outside. Again, the Giants' defence scrambled well. They get a 6 again. They clear their end. Josh Jones made a half break and missed Lola here on his inside supporting, and that would have been a chance to make some good meters for Huddersfield. Flipped straight away the other way. Harry Smith made a break from a good inside pass from Jay Field, but that again ended up with Huddersfield defenders knocking the ball down. Wigan had a good a good opportunity again when Liam Byrne had the ball. I don't know if either of you guys noticed this. He got the ball and threw a pass to Singleton as the first man sort of running at the posts, and Harry Smith went fucking nuts behind because I think they had 4